Everyone, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast dedicated to sincere, in-depth investigations into the paranormal, supernatural, and the metaphysical, with a special focus on the UFO topic. We take a sincere, analytical approach, thoroughly evaluating each case and its implications. Our discussions go beyond the surface as we engage with researchers, investigators, and experiencers to explore the deeper layers of their testimonies. We strive for high-resolution analysis, carefully examining evidence, patterns, and perspectives that challenge conventional thinking. If you're looking for a podcast that seeks deeper understanding, you're in the right place. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at www.paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in tonight for another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Tonight we have a great episode. We have Jason Sands on here tonight. He's gonna tell us about some strange alien experience at a UFO crash site, and that's all I'm going to tell you for now. And Jim, if you want to go ahead and take it, go ahead.
Well, let's just jump straight to the 1994 experience, but let's start at the point of, I guess it was a week before, right, where there was the infamous sighting that we have footage of. What can you tell us before we play the footage about the sort of outset of this?
I was in the Det 1 facility when the previous team was uprange, and they came back into garrison on that Friday like they normally do, and then the following Monday we switch out crews. Sometimes there's people that trade out for different weeks and stuff like that. So we had a bunch of different personnel getting ready, a bunch of personnel coming home, that kind of a thing. And we were all conducting a flag exercise, which we did 180 days out of the year. Training air crews. So that's what we were doing uprange, and we did that quite a lot.
So as far as training air crews, you mean like testing them or
we were
jamming their radar? What did you do exactly you're essentially like making things difficult or presenting challenges for them to overcome?
Yeah, we were inserting realism into the battle space, so to speak. In other words, if you're a pilot, you've got to learn how to fight through things like jamming on your radio, all these different distractions that can happen to you while you're trying to get bombs on target. And we were there to gradually train them on how to use that better and better throughout the weeks that we had them up there. But yeah, we would train with our own people that were stationed at Nellis. And we also had people coming in from around the world that would come play in these war games, dogfighting on the Nellis Test Range. And that's what I was there for, is to help train them and give them a realistic fighting environment.
Okay, and so a week before you were doing these exercises, there was a sighting. The crew, was it your own crew, your own sort of Air Force, whatever?
So they're co-workers. That's who was coming back from the range. But apparently that Friday, they were all very excited when they came in, because apparently a UFO or UAP came back past the schoolhouse, which sits on the top of Black Mountain, which is where we operate from. Because you got to be really high in elevation to get really good radio reception and transmission, which is important for us when we're trying to create the environment. So anyway, they had seen something fly by on the side of the building that we work out of that pass by the windows and into the valley where, we work on quite a lot up there. And there's nothing but dirt roads out there.
So they saw it first visually. It wasn't, picked up on the cameras and then they watched the footage. They actually saw it on the ground.
Correct. I think what happened was the video was captured as it came onto range, and I'm not sure exactly which camera was used to capture the footage on the range, but it could have it occurred all about simultaneously. Where the people at Black Mountain that I work with probably saw it around the same time or within a few minutes of the video capture.
Mm-hmm. And they take these videos because they need to make, there could be some kind of incident or something, and everything has to be. Oh, your audio's.
So it's flight. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
So it's flight safety is the reason that everything is recorded, because if a pilot goes down or aircraft crashes, they want to look at the footage, figure out if there's something there that they could have done different to save somebody's life, or prevent any aircraft falling out of the sky, kind of a thing, and they can just review everything. So that's really what that's there for. It's kind of like a safety net to make sure that we're all operating in a safe environment.
Mm-hmm. And no other purposes. They don't take video for any other reason. Like there couldn't be, a sort of hidden reason, why they're filming the guys, on Nellis Test.
No, it's mainly just to do the visuals and also track the craft that are coming and going. So yes, there is a part of it, an aspect where even for like the battle formations that they would fly, sometimes they would use the video just to observe their own tactics. And things like that, just to see if you could have turned a little bit more sharply here, and you could have gotten a better view of your target, or you wouldn't have got killed, virtually killed, not actually killed, by the adversarial people that were playing the red team, because that's kind of how it worked. Is you have your red team and your blue team, just like you would in flag football or something.
Right, red team's the enemy and blue team's the allies. And then this video leaked out. Or how did this video come into?
That took place after my encounter, but apparently somebody or somehow it got leaked out to the press, and it ended up on the news not too soon, or not too distant after the whole thing happened. So yeah, it just went public from there, and it's been out in the public ever since. You can get out there and you can find it online. I think it's named the Nellis Test Range UFO of 1994, and you can find it just sitting there. And along with that, there's a website that also has the video, but it also has a report of how somebody went through there and kind of verified all the different parts of it, looked at it, and did some analysis.
Okay, so we have that video, and let's play. And Jay, if you want to pause it at any second, to interject, some commentary, rather than wait till the end, to talk about everything, we can do it that way, or we can wait to the end and then talk about it. But yeah, let's play that video now.
Okay. So here you're seeing it come onto the range. There's a sine wave just below. That is the tracking mechanism of the cameras that are out there. That little sine wave is how it tracks whatever craft it's locked onto. So this is where it's trying to lock onto this craft.
So what does it tell you? Will it have a specific signature if it's one thing or another, or what is it exactly telling you about what you're seeing?
At this point, it's trying to lock onto the craft. It's not able to, so they're trying to readjust, trying to refocus it. When the sine wave spikes, that's when we have lock on. When it flatlines, like you just saw, that's when we lose lock.
Okay.
So if you're watching that, you can kind of follow along with how it was difficult to lock onto. Let me put it.
And is it unusual for it to have difficulty like this locking on? Or, I mean, it seems to be just moving linearly right now, or is there something odd about the reason why it's not locking on?
Yeah, most craft it's able to lock on because you're talking about friendly aircraft. It shouldn't give it any problems. There shouldn't be any jamming that's coming back, or countermeasures being used to stop the video cameras from operating. We also have a list of frequencies that are used on range for safety use, and the frequencies for the video cameras are taboo. You cannot touch those frequencies, as well as some other safety frequencies, so that people can, you know, bug out, or you can tell people to cease buzzer to stop the jamming because it's getting too bad, and there might be something dangerous and putting people at risk. So,
Got you. Now, what are we seeing here? Now, is anything happening? I mean, now we're starting to see, it come into some focus, and we're seeing some detail
mhm.
of this, and it's clearly an anomalous shape. I think already,
Mhm.
this doesn't sort of resemble any sort of conventional aircraft, and the people on the ground know it, right? I mean, they're already
Yeah,
aware, that this is something unusual.
yeah.
Was there anything said up until this point of interest, or what can you tell us here?
Well, as you can see, the front end looks very rounded. The back end similarly, but there's a black area on the back side that's shaped like an egg. And then you can see on the two sides, it looks like there's two little ram's horns on the left and the right of it, and you can see it kind of rotating and it's bouncing around a little bit. The video, thankfully, that you guys have has been stabilized, so it's not bouncing the way it was in the original film. And the one thing that I noticed, because I got closer to this the following week, this craft in flight, is that the little ram's horns on either side, there would be like a pulse of this very thick looking mist that would appear in between the fuselage of the craft and these ram's horns. And it was very thick, but it looked like a fog or mist or something like that. I've
And
always
that's
wondered.
that's what you saw a week later, or that's what is shown here in this particular
You
video?
can see it, but it's not. It's very difficult if you don't know what you're looking at. But I'm sure that somebody who's a good imagery analyst can probably take a look at the frames and see if there's some here that captured the misting in between the ram's horns. So again, this is something that there's a lot of imagery analysts out there that could probably help out with that. But I'd love to see some of that. Because I know that sometimes you can detect it, if there's a plasma involved, you can do that through spectral analysis and things like this. So that's something that should be done with this video.
Jason, what's tracking this anomaly here? Is it a plane or?
This is a ground site. It is usually sits out on different places around the entire test range.
Okay.
And you have two components to it. You have the video camera capture, and then you have also like a little radar seeking thing on there that's next to it that's pointed in the same direction. And the two of them kind of work in tandem to keep track of whatever it is you're trying to look at.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now, was it just sort of traveling linearly just across the range, just kind of seemingly going from point A to point B, or was it doing any kind of maneuvers? I mean, it's hard to tell from the video because it's trying to track it and it's jumping around. But
yes, since I wasn't there that week when this video was taken, I was there the following week. The report actually shows the track of the vehicle, and it kind of comes in at a higher altitude, comes in and slowly descends into the valley next to Black Mountain. And then it just travels on and out of.
Descends to the ground?
Yeah, it descends pretty close to the ground. Yeah, it's only like 50 or 100 feet from the ground at one point, I think.
Are we seeing rotation? Is that actual rotation happening, or is that the light?
Yeah, to me, what that looked like to me after I encountered the craft, it was doing the same thing the following week when it was, leaving from my encounter. And yeah, it tended to display the same difficulties in keeping straight. It was like there was a problem with it rotating, and the way it would ascend and descend, it didn't do it smoothly. Let me put it that way. So there may have been some damage to the craft, which is what I found out the next week. So that's all the things here. But yes, here you can see it rotating, and it's trying to, you know.
Yeah, hold it there. I almost feel like on the bottom there, you can kind of tell. Go back a little bit, Todd. You can almost tell, like there. You mentioned a ram's horn kind of shape. I felt
Yes.
like there was discernible there for a moment, a kind of like horn, kind of curvature
Yeah.
to a kind of point almost. And
Yes.
so this is highly likely, in your opinion, to be the same craft or the same type of craft, at least, that you saw a
Yeah.
week later.
Definitely the same type of craft. Yep.
Now, what's the protocol when something like this happens? You know, and did they was it warranted to notify base command? You know that we have something in the sky that doesn't resemble any of our aircraft. I mean, was there any kind of emergency action or specific
No,
protocols gone through as a result
I
of
think
this?
I think what they did was they probably just called it in on the radio. Nobody knew what it was, and usually a report is taken. It was a Friday on top of that, so people are wanting to go home, and the report was probably made on that Friday, and just people would say, okay, we'll review this on Monday, is probably what happened. There was no real emergency. It wasn't like posing a threat, really, other than the fact that we had an unidentified craft on the range. The other aspect of this is perhaps everybody knows that Dreamland is right there. It's you can see it from Black Mountain Schoolhouse where I work. You just step out onto the front porch, and that's the mountain range for Dreamland. So people knew that that was there, and usually when you don't know what the heck you're looking at, you just kind of think, well, it must be something from our boys over there in Dreamland. So there probably wasn't a lot of urgency at that point because nobody had seen a little green man running around. I think that happened later during the weekend, and we'll get into that. But that's kind of how it rolled out. But when I got there on Monday, it was very obvious that security was not called or anything, because usually if there's something like an incident or even if there's a bomb test going on or something like that, they will shut down the range so that nobody gets hurt, and you're out of the way. So obviously this event just kind of slid under the radar, so to speak, and it just wasn't reported properly, I guess, or it wasn't taken seriously. I think is more likely the case.
Now, isn't that majorly suspect? This kind of lax procedure in the event of an unidentified aircraft just coursing through controlled airspace.
Well, they did. I'm pretty sure they did report it. I think that's why I want to hear the audio and try to pull that out at some point. But back then, there were really no procedures on reporting UAP or unidentified craft. All you did was you tried to identify what it was, reported what it is you got, and then it was up to the authorities to do the right thing. And if they wanted to freak out about it, they would have freaked out about it. If they wanted to, handle the report on Monday, they'd handle the report on Monday, which is, I think, what they did.
In hindsight, knowing, and we're going to get into this later, that there might be an ET presence or base somewhere on Nellis Test and Training Range, do you think that could have been a feature and not a bug in terms of the laxness or the lack of response to something like that? Because that was something that was bound to happen, and they didn't. Maybe people at the helm, somewhere, didn't want there to be
Yeah,
protocols.
I don't know.
To, deal with this.
Well, it's not that they didn't want to. I don't think it was a conscious effort. It's just that this kind of thing doesn't happen a lot at all, really. For my 6 years there at Nellis, this is the only one that I know of. And I think it was just a shocking thing where they're just like, well, I don't know what the heck that is, well, just report it and we'll see what happens. And then nothing happens, and then it gets leaked out to the press is what happens. So it's kind of one of those things where, you're just going through your daily job. And I think the people up range who handle the video, sometimes they live in nearby towns, and maybe they got to get home and feed their kids. And
Sorry about that.
It's all right. But anyway, all of those things could have been a factor in this particular thing. I'm not one of the video operators, so I don't know what their thinking was. I think if we were to analyze it properly, we'd need to analyze the audio and what were they saying. Did they report it downrange to the control tower, or did they let it slide by, or were they just curious about it? Those would all be telling facts to figure out from the audio of that particular video we were just watching, because I don't think that's ever been analyzed as the audio and what was actually said. And maybe there is a transcript out there that would show you that, oh yeah, they were just kind of reporting it like, yeah, we don't know what it is, and they just didn't know what to do with the information other than to report it and say, hey, yeah, we got an unidentified whatever. We're here by Black Mountain, and we don't know what to do. And they were just told, okay, well, save the video and, whatever.
Todd, did you see that weren't you looking, and I thought you mentioned prior to the show that there was a transcript.
Yes.
If we can grab a transcript real quick, I mean, maybe just take a few moments just to glance at that. I mean, do you know of anything, Jason?
Here's what I'm going to do. Let me share. I'm going to share this footage. So let me cue it up. So I'm going to share it, and it has the transcript. It'll come right up.
Okay. I also wanted to mention that a lot of times with air traffic control, the same thing happens with these pilots seeing things. They'll say, hey, do I have something off my 12 o'clock, and then the traffic is not noticeable at the air traffic control center. So they're just like, nope, I don't see anything. And sometimes the pilots report it, sometimes they don't. They just go, oh, well, don't know what the heck that was. That's kind of what happens here on range. I think it's kind of the same thing.
Okay, now let me find you guys. Okay, so the original transcript was by Martin J. Powell. So, and it's pretty close from what I was listening to. Remember, I had mentioned about the helicopter, and I was like, wow. And even they said, no, it's definitely not that. So let me get this up.
So it goes by fast, and we might have to pause it if there's a long sentence.
See, there we go. It
might be some kind of debris.
Yeah.
What kind of debris would that be? Pause it real quick.
Sure.
Or what was that? Go back to that last line that we missed. What would it be? Like debris, like something that had exploded?
Sometimes there are weather balloons that just go in, and I think maybe that's what they might have thought this was, but other people have said this looks nothing like a balloon at all. It holds its shape and everything. And then they're like, yeah, why is it so slow? So
he's saying that's why it's so slow. Why is he suggesting that it's so slow? Because
I don't know. I'd have to know if that
he knows, or unless that's maybe not exactly what he's saying.
Yeah, I don't think that's exactly what he's saying. But anyway, I think he may be thinking about, air streams aloft that could be affecting this craft. But I think, again, in the report, they also did some analysis on the wind currents and things like this to try to see whether or not it was something that was flowing in the wind, like a balloon would or not. And I think they came to the conclusion that there are parts in this video where it definitely looks like it's flying against the wind.
Okay.
Stuff like that. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, those are the kind of things that I wish that somebody would really analyze those things, those details.
And that question from Paulie, I mean, was there anything about it that gave the impression that it was being intelligently controlled? I mean, the fact that, was there the realization that because, we're not able to track this easily and we should be, was there the thinking that, this is jamming the tracking or interfering in some kind of way?
I believe at one point there was an analyst who did analyze the video and said that, yes, he did observe jamming, some sort of a way to stop the lock on from occurring. And he was pointing to the sine wave down below the craft there that you see in the video. So yeah, that's a part of the analysis somebody else has already done, is that yes, there was some sort of a jamming that seemed to come from this craft. which is highly unusual. Weather balloons don't do that.
No.
Right. I would say what features make it plausibly ET are just the fact that, I mean, it just seems just a very odd sort of, I mean, ram's horns kind of shape, you know, I mean, that just seems very bizarre. And, you know, there's so many, you know, craft out there that you could say, you know, that we could, you know, we might design, you know, something shaped like that, but something that looks like that, you know, not that it's certain that it's not human, but I would say that something very bizarre like that is more likely.
I think what's going through their heads is just like for us, you know, you say you go out into the woods and you're hunting and you see something dark, but you can't quite make it out, but you know it's hiding behind a bush. You kind of sit there for quite a few minutes just trying to squint your eyes, and I think that's what they're doing is they're just kind of squinting their eyes, thinking, "What on earth is this?" You know, and they're trying to contact the controller and everybody else about it, and they're like, "We just don't know what it is," you know.
Right. Go on with the video, Todd, and see if there's anything else interesting that we can comment on. Might be some kind of debris.
And that's the other thing. If this is a damaged weather balloon, you'd see stuff hanging off the bottom of this or some kind of torn fabric flopping in the wind.
Right. So at this point, they just see it as a dot. It looks like a dot, but it's different than most dots.
Yep.
Because it's a complex shape, and they're noticing that, you know, it's not just a round dot. What was that last line? Was that anything? Just zoom back real quick, Todd.
Right about there.
It's just some kind of technical.
Zero level. Wait a minute. 110. Okay. So 110 flight level.
So if it's heading north, would it have been?
Oh, no, that's the heading it's going in. Okay, so there you go. You get the heading that it's going in. So that would be really good for like somebody to do wind analysis against the heading that this craft had.
Mm-hmm. And would that also imply that it was coming from the direction of the base? Isn't the base sort of south? I mean, I have no idea actually, but I imagine in my mind that
it is west of Groom Lake, and it's kind of near the central portion of that western area. A little bit further to the north and south. So it's kind of like slightly north and west of Groom Lake is where this is happening.
Okay, go ahead, Todd, and play the rest of it. If it's a long line, pause it.
Excuse me. It's not north of Groom Lake. It's kind of like parallel with Groom Lake.
Okay.
But to the west of it. But if you were to draw a circle, it'd probably be on the northern side of the mountain range for Groom Lake.
You're saying I can't get a result on these things. I wonder what that is meant to mean.
Right. Well, that's what he's saying. He's confused because he's like, I can normally get this thing to lock on, and usually you can, you know, identify what it is pretty quickly. But he's finding it a mystery as to I can't lock. You know, I'm not getting anything. This isn't normal, kind of a deal. So he's running through his checklist of things in his head as to how do I identify this and get this thing tracked properly.
Right. And some people are guessing. One person thinks it's a balloon, another person thinks it's a helicopter.
Yep. And that's kind of what the guys were saying when they came back.
And is this what happens here? They lose it in the sun. There's a moment where you kind of lose it, and it's because of the sunlight, correct?
Yeah. So that's another directional piece of data you can look at.
And there becomes a point where it's clear that it's not any of those conventional things mentioned, like the balloon. Is that right? Everybody on the ground at some point, it comes to the realization.
At this point, if you're looking at this thing like they are, you're thinking this is not a balloon. Yeah, that's what hits me immediately when I see it at this point, because you're clearly seeing a structured craft that doesn't look like anything you've seen before, and it's not a balloon that would show some sort of undulating surface and other things, and it's got parts of it that don't look like a balloon or any other craft that I know of.
Last thing before we go on, there was something mentioned, Todd, if you want to go the whole way to the end, something about FLIR. Can you tell us, Jay, what were
FLIR is
they?
not being used here, as far as I know, unless it's out at nighttime. This was taken during the day. So I'm pretty sure that FLIR, I'm sure that maybe they have FLIR there, but I don't recall that ever being part of the apparatus or the videotaping array of the Nellis Test Range. They may have had those cameras, but this is the 1990s, so they may have been installing that at that time. I don't know. All those things are factors that need to be looked into, as you know. They can all maybe produce more data.
Well, before we move on, what's your opinion? We'll move right along in a minute here. What is your opinion of the recent video? I think Polly might be referring to the one that got shot, looked like it got shot with a Hellfire missile.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the one I'm guessing that she's referring to?
Yeah, I did have a lot of friends look at that and give me input. I have to tell you, there's still two different sides to the issue. There are people saying, yes, it's a balloon, but they're not explaining very well how the three objects seem to appear and, continue to be caught in the airstream or seem to be following the craft after it's been hit by the Hellfire.
Right. That seems impossible to me if it were a balloon. I mean, if a missile hit a balloon and pieces of it broke off, I mean, those pieces wouldn't be sort of traveling along with the bulk of the...
Yeah, you see some sort of a change in the direction according to the wind. You know how it is. If you just flying a kite, you can tell how the tail of a kite just kind of flops around from time to time. Sometimes it goes straight, but a lot of times it's just floating around. The same thing would happen here. The other thing they can't explain very well, the ones that are in the balloon group, is that how did the Hellfire bounce off of some kind of very thin fabric kind of a craft and not rip into it and immediately start to see this stuff drop off into the water? And apparently that does happen, or it descends, at least, because I think the tape of that craft is actually longer than what we got to see on the initial one. So those are things, again, that there's arguments. Now, the other side, the other group that are saying, no, this can't be a balloon, are the ones that are stating that, yes, these look like each of these things that came out of the craft or look like they came out of this object and are following along with the object. They all appear to have the same shape, same size, as if they were, attached or inside of this craft when it got hit. And they only appear after it gets hit. And they're saying that is highly unusual. That is definitely not something a weather balloon does. Because usually the equipment is usually hanging down or inside of the balloon itself. And once it's torn, you can definitely see that, oh, there it is. There's the package, the weather balloon package just fell out, and you can identify that very, very easily. But the people that are saying that it was a balloon cannot explain, what is that then? Is that some sort of a weather device? And they're like, nobody can say bona fidely that, oh, that's what this device is. So there's a lot of those arguments that are still up in the air that this is inconclusive, but this is part of the debate. This is what I expect, because when I was working for the working on the UAP task force on their website to help with the analysis, I wasn't working for the UAP task force. I was working just on the website where they post all the videos as an intelligence guy. And that's the way the debate goes, is you get, the pros, the cons, you weigh them all out, and you try to come to a conclusion. But sometimes you just don't come to a conclusion, and it remains unknown. And that's what's happening now. We're still in the unknown category.
And I've gotten the understanding, I forget who was mentioning this, that if we had the full clip of the video, we only have a segment of it, but if we had the full clip, you would be able to conclude, some say, that it's either a balloon or not a balloon if we just had the entirety of the footage.
Yeah, and I think that's what the argument is a lot of times we want more data. You're talking about these UAP to begin with are very fleeting. You only have a few seconds to capture the data that you need. So if you're not flying a military craft that has your gun camera on, the radar on, maybe even your IR, and you're cycling through all those different modes on your detection device or your sensors, you don't get all that data because you've only had a couple of seconds, and the pilot maybe only had enough time to press one button, if that. So you don't get a lot of data a lot of times because of that. So these ones that we've seen are like that. That's why we can't conclude. It's just sometimes the data's not all there, but what data we do have could strongly point to the fact that this was a structured object, and also what it does is another piece to that, where the pattern, whether it was transmedium, in other words, it went underwater and then back out of the water, or if it went through a high G turn at a very fast rate of speed where, it would kill a normal pilot. Those are very telling things. And we do have video of that sort of stuff. So even though we may not have like IR data on it, we may actually have some other evidence that points to the fact that we don't know what this is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, getting back to Nellis Air Force Base, let's continue where we left off. So a week later from that footage we just watched, you start your training exercises that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Let's pick up from there and tell us what happened at that point.
So the next Monday, we're packed up, we're ready to go. It takes about 2.5 hours to drive up range, and we convoy up. It's actually on Sunday. We drive up there on Sunday and check into our hotel. It's the Burrow Inn, which is there in Beatty, Nevada.
And this is on the range. This is
near the range. It's near the gate that we go in to get on the range. So,
do you need me to pull up those? I have the maps. You need to put me to pull those maps up.
Yeah, you can do that if you want. That way, it can help people to visualize what I'm talking about.
All right.
We have two. I'm not sure which is the better one, but we can.
Yeah, there's two of them. He can let us know.
So as you're looking here, you can see the Nellis Air Force Base Test Range is practically the entire state of Nevada. So what we're looking at is, if you look on the angled part that comes down from the north in a straight line, and then it angles then kind of sharply to the south and east, that's about along that flat part there that goes south and east is along the same lines where Beatty, Nevada is in that area. And then we would drive up onto the range. It takes about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour to get to Black Mountain from that hotel. And it's all dirt roads, so it's really tough, four-wheel driving kind of thing. And then we get onto the range. That's kind of up there a little bit further north. And then we take you go east from there towards Black Mountain. And then you can see in the central portion, that's where Groom Lake is. That's where all the fun stuff happens with UAP, apparently. And then we were, in this day, we actually were convoying up, and the lead, the ranking member, also happened to be there that previous week because he had traded out days for whatever reason. I don't know whether he had to, had some kind of family coming into town, and he had to, switch out with somebody. But anyway, he said, we're all going to the cantonment area, which is very close to the entrance gate onto the range. And it's called a cantonment area, and that's where you can change out flat tires, you can fix, general things, gas up your vehicle if you need to. So he said, we got to go in there because the video operator wants to talk to us, and the video operator's in that same cantonment area where you could gas up your vehicle. They just had like this little mobile home that they stayed in.
And so the video operator could sort of redirect your. I mean, aren't you kind of on like a mission, and you've got to go according to or proceed according to a specific protocol? Like, was it normal to be sort of sidetracked by
most times we would pass? Most times we would just drive right past the cantonment area. Most of the time. Mm-hmm. Very rarely had I ever needed to have somebody stop there to fix a vehicle or something like that. So this was a very unusual request from the ranking individual.
Okay.
And he just said, yeah, we've got to go talk to the guy. And so we all got out of the cars after we parked, went into the video operator's hut. And this guy was sitting with his, computer screen up where he monitors this video that we just saw. And he ushers us over to his workstation at the far right-hand corner of the inside of this hut. And off to the left, there's this lady and a gentleman sitting in chairs. They kind of look white as ghosts. They look very upset, that are sitting against the wall.
In uniform, what was the lady and the gentleman?
No, they're all wearing civilian clothes. These guys were just, usually the range operators lived in towns nearby, like in Beatty or Needles or wherever, or in, Pahrump. There was another town. But they just drive up, when they work because it's easier for them to drive there. Because you're talking for me to get from Nellis up range, like I said, it's about a 2 to 2.5 hour drive.
So these weren't military personnel at all in this Cantomer
right.
area.
They were contractors.
And so they can call up. And so I just want to point out, so they can just call up. How did they get a hold of, if they're just contractors, how did they get a hold of your ranking officer, and how are they able to get him to redirect the convoy to come to the Cantomer area? I mean,
that's just a simple phone call. Back then we didn't have cell phones or anything, so we and they and literally everybody that is coordinating the exercises are in contact with each other for one reason or another.
So they're involved in the exercises.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So everybody has a phone book back in those days. You're talking the 1990s. So the phone book is there available to them. They know what offices they want to talk to and stuff like this. They knew that this thing flew by Black Mountain. They knew that we worked on Black Mountain. Therefore, they probably called and said, hey, can you bring your team up this way? Because we want to show them the video and see who saw this and who didn't. And if they saw anything that would help us identify what it was. Is kind of what I think probably the conversation was.
But not in any kind of official capacity, right? I mean,
no. There's probably just a friendly call, because we do that all the time. They probably just said, hey, hey, I'm the video guy up here, and we just saw something on range. It went right by where you guys work. Can you guys drop by on Monday when you guys got your new team to come see this? And that's kind of probably what happened.
I got you. Okay, so you're at the Cantomer area, and you all get out. Everybody gets out of the how many cars, first of all, and how many people are involved here?
There's about 3-4 of them. About anywhere between 2 to 4 people per car. They're all Chevy Blazers, 4-wheel drives.
And everybody is expected to come.
There's about 10 to 12 people going up.
And all 12 people are expected to sort of enter into the.
Yeah, we all entered as a group. Yeah, and we all gathered around the video operator's position, and he had us all sign a piece of paper saying, okay, just write down your name and tell me whether you were here and saw this thing last week or not. And then he took all the names, put the paper down, and showed us the video. And some of the people were like, yeah, that's what I saw last week. And the rest of us were just like in shock, going, what on earth is that thing? And that's how it went. So we viewed the video for ourselves, and he showed it to us and took down our names. So whoever can find that piece of paper, and again, another good piece of data as to who exactly was there the following week.
Why did you have to sign something? Was it a witness statement that you signed, or
no? It was just something you print off with just a piece of paper. Like he could have done it on like a spiral notebook even, but this was more like 1990s version of a Excel spreadsheet where it just had lines on it, and you could put a column name at the top.
And was that just normal protocol? Or
no, this was not a standard form. No, this is just something he probably came up with on his own.
And why did he want you all to sign it? Why was that necessary to him to have a record?
I think he was thinking about how he was going to handle this or do something with it. I think he didn't know really what it was still obvious to me that he hadn't decided what he was going to do just yet. So I think he was just taking down names and trying to get as much information as he could, and then deciding what he would like to do.
Okay. And what was your reaction? You were just amazed. You hadn't. Did you hear about it previous to seeing the video?
When the crew came in from the previous week, I walked in because I wanted to get turnover from a couple of guys I knew, ask them about the equipment, and because sometimes you have system problems that you have to work out, or little unique things you want to iron out. And we did that near the break area, and they were very excited. A lot of them were, I don't know what that was. It was some kind of weird, craft or helicopter. And other people, no, it was a UFO. And everybody was doing that. And some people were just shaking their heads, refusing to talk about it. We heard about it the previous week. So, that's how it kind of went down.
Okay, so now as you're walking out of there, you're confronted by the woman that you mentioned that you saw when you came in, who looked, and what was her appearance again? She looked visibly nervous or upset, or what was her demeanor or disposition?
Well, I didn't really pay much attention to her until she stopped me going out the door to get back in the vehicles, and she just kind of said, "There's somebody on the range. You don't talk to him. Don't talk to him." And she had the look of like fear in her face, like she'd seen a ghost. So I imagine she ran into this person that came out of the craft at some point, and she was very upset about it. And I just kind of looked at her and thought, well, thank you very much. I'm going to get in the car and head on up.
What about the other man? I mean, was he kind of like on the same page as her? I mean, there was another man.
He did not stand up or anything. He just remained in his chair against the wall. He did not move, really. He looked around at us, and you could tell he was kind of in shock as well.
And again, these aren't military people. These are just contractors.
These are contractors wearing civilian clothes.
And so, not to jump the gun, but I mean, it gives the impression that perhaps the individual that we're going to talk about here in a minute, was going around maybe to everyone that he was available, and asking what he asked you. It gives you that impression. But the comment, don't talk to him. Now, is anything odd, that strikes you with that, like don't talk to him, like as if, does that imply at all like that she had some kind of knowledge as to the identity, or why would she say don't talk to him?
I don't know. I think that after I get to the point where I've talked to this individual, I could see where she would probably be very upset because there was a telepathic component to the communication. And that is very strange to encounter. And maybe that's what was really upsetting her. And we'll get into that as we get through the event.
But there's some odd restraint here as well, because why didn't she just, tell you what had happened? Like, why didn't she just go into the story? Like, listen, we were out there on the range, and this is what happened.
She could tell we were needing to get out and get up to Black Mountain to set up our equipment. She probably didn't want to get in our way. She looked nervous, and I think she probably was thinking, if I tell them what I know about this individual, they're going to think I'm crazy. It's probably what was running through her mind.
Okay.
Because you got to understand, she's a contractor. She was hired to just monitor the video or to help set up the cameras. She wasn't trained in the military. She wasn't told any procedures other than what she needed to do to get her work done for the day. So it's not like there was this whole complete structured UFO program that she had to be trained on. And if there's an unknown craft, that didn't even happen to me as a military guy. We weren't even trained on how to do that, how to handle it. So for her, it was probably even worse. So it's not like everybody up there had this really formal training on what to do in this case.
Right. And we'll also just note that apparently her memory, contrary to the other people who were in your convoy, her memory apparently wasn't wiped of the event immediately afterward, as
Correct.
it was fellow soldiers.
It's quite possible she had just run into this guy, because what they would do is they would go out to the sites and come back in early in the morning before we got there. So maybe she had a run-in with him just before we got there, because she looked like she had just, seen a ghost. Like I said, it wasn't like, lingering around. It was like she had just encountered something she couldn't,
Right, and you would think that she would have, not to just belabor this, but you would think that she would have said something to the video operator, and when the video operator would have shown you the footage, that would have been part of the conversation. Like, hey, there's
I'm
another
sure.
calf. You're showing us the footage. Why didn't if the video operator had been told by the woman, unless he wasn't, why wouldn't that have been included in the discussion? Like, we've got this odd craft, and then the woman over here, she says that she saw.
I'm sure they had that conversation, but it was not in our presence. And that's why I think they were sitting against the walls, because they had already talked to the video operator, and the video operator said, okay, here they come. Just go sit down over there, and I'm just going to let them see the video, and we're going to take down some more information and let these guys get on with their job and all that kind of stuff. So it probably was a conversation they had before we even showed up.
Okay, all right, and then what happens next?
So we all get in the cars, we're in our Chevy Blazers. We start traveling down the road, and about somewhere in the first mile, we definitely do see a person standing on the north side of the roadway, on the shoulder of the road, again, dirt roads. And he's coming towards us and kind of running in a really weird way. It's like his arms are flopping behind him. You know how we kind of run with our elbows bent.
Right.
His arm, it was like he was flapping around in water, is what it looked like to me. And that he was going to, it was like he was pushing through a headwind of a hurricane force, is what it looked like to me. And he was coming closer and closer. You could tell he was trying to hail us down as well. And then I kind of looked to the left.
So he was waving. So he was.
Yeah, every once in a while he would raise his arm, and you'd see he was trying to wave at us like, "Hey, slow down." And as we're approaching him closer and closer, I also looked to my left on the north side of the shoulder, about 50 yards off the roadway. There's this craft, and it looks exactly like we just saw in the video, but it's resting on the desert floor, and it's resting on those ram's horns, just like a helicopter does on the skids. So I'm looking at it and thinking, man, that's the weirdest looking thing I've ever seen. And I'm looking at it going, yeah, it's got a canopy like a helicopter. It has no rotors like a helicopter. It has no blades, chopper blades above the craft. And I was thinking, holy crap. But
what about windows? Does it have any
windows?
Did it have windows or glass?
No.
What color was it?
The front canopy was a bit shiny, I would say, kind of silvery in the light as you look. But that was about it. So anyway, at the same time I'm looking there, I can also see, that we're getting closer to this guy. And when I look at him, I'm going, oh crap. This guy looks like he's hypothermic. He's got this blue tint to his skin. He looked like he was very light skinned, like an albino was to begin with. And I thought to myself, this guy's freezing to death, because this was, winter time, and it gets deathly cold out there. And I thought perhaps this guy, was suffering. So I'm telling the driver, who's also the ranking guy, and I said, hey, we got to pull over. This guy needs help. And by this time, we're only about 30 feet from the individual, and I could see he's got a uniform on, just like we do. He's got that pale skin with the blue undertone. And I'm just starting to peel off my jacket, thinking I've got to wrap this guy up and get him in the car, warm him up, because he's freezing to death. And then as we get to the point where he's right at the hood of the car, the corner of the hood of the car, I'm popping my door open, and the guy in the passenger seat screams he's got no effing ears. And I just thought, well, how freaking rude. This guy's probably dying of hypothermia, and that's all you got to say? Because I thought, well, maybe this guy's, a burn victim or something. Maybe he doesn't have ears or something like that. But what's that matter if this guy's dying, kind of thing? But it didn't stop me. So I put my boot out onto the roadway, and my door swings open. So this individual is standing just on the other side of the door from me as I'm stepping onto the roadway. And I shut the door and look up, and the guy's got no freaking ears. And then I noticed his eyes were like 2 to 3 times bigger than mine. The corners of the eyes were so big that how our corners are here, they were out here in his temples. And I'm looking at his earlobes, and I'm thinking, well, he doesn't look like a mutant. He doesn't look like a fire or burn victim, because these are very symmetric. It looks just like our ears do, except if you can imagine, instead of them sticking out, that our layer of skin goes right over the top and flattens them against our skull. That's what it looked like.
Okay, so he does have ears. They're just...
Yeah, because I could see the orifices, I could see the holes, and I could also see little bumps like, we have here, these little kind of lumpy areas in our earlobe.
Right.
But they're all pressed against his skull from his skin.
And you're also at this moment, shock overcomes you, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
you're not just sort
It
of
was like
observing. As soon as you noticed that it was very different.
Yeah, it was like looking at death. Honestly, I honestly feared for my life at that point. I was like, that shock you get, like when you see like a grizzly bear is going to take a swipe at you out in the Yellowstone Park or something. You just know life is done. That's how I felt. And then luckily he started talking to me. Immediately I can tell this is not English, but however, somehow I'm understanding everything he says.
So orally, there's something you can hear coming from his mouth, like some kind of verbal language, but simultaneous to that, you're getting some kind of telepathic or some kind of mental conveyance, which
the
is
understanding, right?
Standing.
Yeah, and what I break that down to is you and I can talk like we are right now, and I'm attaching meaning to words. You're listening and attaching meaning to words so quickly that we totally disregard the thought process of a word. In other words, every word we speak actually has an emotional content that actually conveys the meaning of that word before you speak it, and then you speak the word, and that way I'm able to verbally tell you what it is that's on my mind. So that thought of the understanding of the words was coming just that split second before he actually said it to me. And that's why I knew it was kind of like, this was telepathic, that I was able to understand him because I was listening to not only his audible word, but also the meaning of the word from his mental ability to communicate.
And the meaning, was it kind of more at a sort of an emotional level, or like in terms
I
of
believe that words
structure?
Yeah, I mean, if I say the word sad, I'm attaching an emotional sad in my head, but when it comes out, I say the word sad, but I'm feeling the word also. That's what was going on, is I could feel the word meaning, just like, every word that I'm speaking right now, there's a little bit of an understanding of what that word means as I'm speaking it.
And so was it a very precise understanding of, or was it a dull kind of understand, or sort of a general sort of idea of what he's talking about? Or was it very clear in your mind exactly?
Very clear. It was like listening to yourself think. In other words, how sometimes when you're by yourself and you're just thinking about your wife and your kids or your friends and what you want to do tonight, you're kind of floating around with all these meanings of things and feelings about this and feelings about that. That's kind of the level of communication that I felt, the telepathic connection. So the words, in essence, were irrelevant in that part of the communication. Because just like if I could get into your head right now, you and I would probably have the same sorts of feelings about words in many ways. Because that's the way we were raised. We were from infancy, that's what we were told, that this word means this word means that. And we attach those meanings to ourselves. So that's what I was feeling from him, was his feelings and understanding of words was the same as mine. So there was no difference when we connected mentally. It was like talking in your head rather than, out loud in some cases, but he was doing both.
Well, that's interesting that there was a kind of synonymousness.
There is a synchronicity actually after the event, and I was interviewed by the UAP task force folks. they actually had me break that down. And also the intel community people really, hit me up like you're doing about, well, what was going on here. I think that was when I understood that, there's a lot more to this type of communication than people give credit to. And that it's a simplistic way though. I didn't feel dizzy. I didn't feel like I didn't have a headache or anything, but there's residue data also that came from him because we were actually sharing each other's mind space. And there was actually some residue memories that came out of this about him. And I'm sure he carries part of my personality with him because of that.
Interesting. So there was some, there wasn't just a transmittance of information to you. There was some kind of linkage, seemingly.
Yeah. The sharing of
your
literally
mind,
sharing.
mind.
Yeah. You're sharing mind space.
And so the residue that you talk about, that wasn't intentional that came through, but just the fact that you were your minds were linked in some kind of way, you kind of picked up on that incidentally. And also, so at this moment, you're calming down. Now, I've heard before that, like in abduction experiences, when the taller gray, communicates to the abductee, there is this sort of mind linkage or staring procedure. And as soon as that happens, or typically, not always, this does vary, and the abductee is looking into the eyes of the gray, they start to feel calm.
Yep.
Now, do you feel like you're becoming calm because of just the fact that you're gleaning at this moment that he's just asking you a question, you're starting to sort of recognize the intent here, and that's why you're calming down? Or do you think there was any kind of psionic or sort of psychic influence that was deliberate from him that was calming you down at that moment?
It was a little bit of both, I'd say. Number one, just like, if somebody's in shock, the first thing people tell you to do is talk to them, to calm them down or to get them to calm down. So that kind of happened when he started talking to me. And then when I had to answer questions, the same thing was happening, just on that communicative level where you have to stop yourself and on top of that, this mental connection, I did feel, very civilized at that point, I guess. And it was coming from him on an emotional level. In other words, how the best I can describe it is when you see somebody come into the room that you don't really like, you just feel like something's off. Or when you see somebody exudes a lot of positive energy, you feel good. Well, this was one of those cases where I felt the positive energy from this person. It was probably telepathic as well, that he was calm. Therefore, I was calm because he was relating his calmness to me in that way. In both the way he talked, you could tell by the tone of his voice he was calm, he was friendly. And then the telepathy part of it, also, I felt this kind of calmness, this respect that he was showing me, civility, and the way that, he talked. So there was all of that kind of hit me and calmed me down.
And it wasn't just civility. I think you described it in another podcast as like maximal civility. Like there was something almost profound about the civility of
right.
And that came across immediately. Like it was just instant that you knew his moral integrity and so forth.
Exactly. And the way I described it in the other podcast, I guess, was that his mind was much more organized and controlled than mine was. I think, I akin it to things that we see in the movies where, that one dog that's running around, squirrel, squirrel. Our minds are really scattered a lot of times, when we're walking around in life. And this guy was totally focused. And I knew that it couldn't be coming from me because my mind is much more scattered than his was. I actually felt ashamed that I didn't have the same level of control. So even though I was feeling this as if it was my own civility, it was actually coming from him. And that's another part of telepathy I think some people need to identify. And not everybody has the ability to, kind of see that, oh, this thought's not coming from me, because when they feel emotion, it's very strong. It feels like it's coming, like you're feeling it along with them. And that's kind of what was happening. I was feeling the same thing as him, but I knew it was not me because I could tell this is not the way I think. You know what I'm saying?
It was kind of foreign to you
Right.
in
Exactly.
some way. Okay, and what did he say? What was
Well,
the
he began
first?
talking to me and said, yeah, my craft is broken. I need some material to repair it. Do you have any tantalum? And I'm like, or tintium rather. And I'm like, you mean titanium? And he's like, no, that's not what I need. And then he's like, well, do you know where I can maybe get some? And I'm like, well, because I had just been excommunicated from the program. I had just been debriefed, some months prior from the program. I'm like, well, Groom Lake is right over there. And I started pointing at him. And that's when I got hit by this wave of disgusted emotion, very strong. And he's like, I will never ask those barbarians and murderers for anything, is what hit me. And he had this definite emotion of disgust. And that's where I was like, well, I'm not disgusted with these people at Groom Lake, but apparently he is, and even though that emotion that I felt, I was like, why am I so disgusted right now? I had to really think to myself, oh, that's coming from him. Again, and again, this telepathic thing is so foreign to us that's kind of what happens to us is we sometimes misconstrue what is actually happening. And that's why I think sometimes when people are abducted, it turns into a horror show because sometimes they're scared of us, just like we're scared of them. And, people wake up on the table and they're scared. And then the entities get scared. And because you're sharing the emotion with each other, you're just amplifying it every time. And then you get more scared. They get more scared before you know it's a horror show.
Exactly. We were actually talking about this very thing in the last episode with Yossi Ronan. He noticed that when he started to calm down, the demeanor, the sort of fierce sort of look of the ET that was staring at him started to soften as he started to relax. And there was clearly a kind of correlation between his emotion and the demeanor and disposition of the alien that was standing before him.
Yeah, and in some cases that you do feel like an aura of evil sometimes because they don't like us. Some of them don't like us. Just like, we have people we like and we dislike. The same thing happens with them.
And can you describe a little further the emotion of disgust that he felt towards the people at Groom Lake? Now, was there any sort of element of violence, of ill will, or hatred, or what do you think? How could
it
you
was just straight
characterize
out disgust. It was like that
revulsion?
feeling. It was just that feeling of like you've just the feeling I had, it was very much like I remember the same emotion I felt was when I saw somebody slap their kid in a store. I was disgusted. That was the same level of disgust that I felt from this guy. I didn't have any violent emotions about wanting to beat the guy up or anything that did that to his kid, but it sure as hell disgusted me. And, that's kind of what he was feeling. He wasn't feeling like violent towards them. He was just like, I am so through with these people. They're truly barbaric. They're truly people I don't like. That was the feeling he had. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to laser off their heads. No.
Right. And was it indicative that he had some past interactions, some bad interaction? Like, did you have the sense that something had happened between him and them?
Definitely. Yeah. He had some sort of experience. It was that disgust was attached to some. Yeah. And it felt like it was, not in the distant past either. It was something that happened recently.
Okay. So he asks you, so he says, my ship is broken. And so was it then you realized that the sort of craft that was on the side of the road, that was a UFO? And when you first saw that craft, I mean, you didn't interpret that from the get-go, right, as an alien craft. You thought, that's some unusual aircraft or something, that,
Yeah, I was just like the video operators. I was trying to assess what on earth is this thing, because it was real. It was sitting there, and I'm trying to assimilate, what on earth am I looking at here? Because my brain was just going haywire trying to figure out, well, it's not that craft. It's not this craft. It's not that craft. I was just, it's kind of like a little bit of a shock, but it's just more or less your brain is trying to identify something that it can't identify.
Now, do you think that your response, your reaction, and internal thoughts whilst this is going on? I mean, I know they're being influenced by the entity to some degree because your minds are linked, but was it mostly natural? Were you like suddenly thinking, "Oh my God, aliens are real? I'm talking to an alien right now." Like, was there the sort of typical sort of what you would think would be the typical reaction upon suddenly being confronted with an alien? Like, this is real. Was that going through your mind, or was there any? Because you do hear, in some uh, ET encounters people behaving unnaturally. Like I was a lot calmer. I wasn't thinking. I should have been thinking this, and I wasn't thinking that at all. And my mind was just kind of elsewhere.
My mind was in the conversation and trying to think of how I could possibly help him. So I think I was in a mode of compassion for him, trying to help. Therefore, my friendliness and my calmness actually intensified just from my own accord, because I realized that this guy was harmless. He wasn't here to hurt me. That he was very civilized. I could feel that from him. And so I very quickly went from complete fear into this mode of, oh, this is just like another person, but he's not from around here. And we can communicate, and he needs help. And so that it's just like, if you stopped me on the street corner and said, I need to get gas. Can we go to the nearest gas station? That's kind of how it felt. Once I was calm enough to feel that way.
Now, unfortunately, I know there is a picture or drawing or some kind of representation that is out there of this ET. Todd, are you still there with us?
Yes. Go ahead, Jim.
Is it possible, Jay, that we could find? Do you know where online that image is of the ET that you saw, the possible tall white? Could that be looked up, and what would one type in? I'd like to find that if we could, and I meant to get that prior to the podcast to have, but
Yeah.
maybe
I'd
type
copy on my computer, but I'd have to end the conversation just to pull it back up.
Yeah. See if you can find it and type in maybe Jason Sands, tall white, and go to images and see if anything comes up. He's got a hat on. So he was also wearing sort of a battle dress, a BDU, a battle dress uniform. And there was something odd about that fact. It was completely clean and pristine.
Yeah, it was like brand new, and you don't go up range with that. You usually take your really dirty uniforms because you're out there in the desert. You don't wear your best. So that stood out to me like a sore thumb. I'm like, you're definitely new to around here, that kind of a thing. So other people think it was a hologram, or it could have been. I don't know. Either way, he just was wearing a uniform that looked like mine, but it had no insignia, it had no name or anything else on it. It was just a plain old uniform.
So like the same, like an Air Force uniform?
Yeah, it's a battle dress uniform, camouflage and all that stuff, with a little hat that has the flat top, and yeah.
And do you think it's possible that could have been, we know that ETs sort of have this capacity to sort of mask themselves or alter their appearance in some kind of way, that maybe he did that deliberately to make himself more sort of approachable. That's it.
Acceptable. Yeah. And yeah, he did, he did look kind of normal from a distance, but when you get up close, like I did, yeah, it was definitely much different. So in this picture, like I was saying on the Joe Rogan show, this nose is a little bit smaller than it actually was on him. He had more of a rounded nose, like an Irishman, or, somebody, like your grandma or grandpa. I remember that both my British grandparents had kind of a rounded nose on the end. That's kind of what he had. The eyes are still a little bit small in this one. They could have been a little bit bigger, but this is pretty close on the eyes.
And maybe they could have also stretched, because I'm not noticing the detail you mentioned on how they sort of stretch back along the sides of their head a little bit. Is that exemplified in that photo, or is that something else that's maybe a little bit inaccurate?
Yeah, this one's pretty close. They look like normal eyes, just very large. And the other thing is the eyebrows, they weren't there. He had no hair on his head, as far as I could tell.
And is that all pupil? The sort of blacks in his eyes. Remember that detail?
It was difficult. It's like looking at somebody that has very dark eyes. You can, sometimes you have difficulty seeing the iris from the pupil. That's the color he had, and it was very hard to distinguish between the two. But it was there, and he did have whites around his eyes, like you see here. But the iris and the pupil were much larger than normal, and the lips, I'd say, those are pretty darn close. That's pretty close to what I remember the lips looking like.
No color to the lips, or what is characteristic?
Yeah, he didn't have like overly pink lips or anything else like that. They just looked like, they look more like normal skin color lips, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's missing here is that he had a lot more what I would say are like wrinkles that people get from old age. He didn't look like an old man. He looked like a young man. That just had wrinkles,
a lot of wrinkles.
No, like, just a normal amount, kind of like what a 40-year-old would have,
Well, how can we square though? If he had wrinkles, how did he look young at the same time, though?
Just I don't know how to put it. It's kind of like how you have some people that when they get in their 40s and 50s, they get more wrinkles, but they still have that young look, and then you have other people that look like they're 20 years older than what they look.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
What about his physique? Now was he slender? What was he?
Medium. I'd say medium build. If he had the same weight as we did at his height, because he stood a good few inches shorter than I stand right at 6 foot, or 5'11". He was definitely at least 3 inches or more shorter than I was. I'd say he probably about 150 to 170 pounds if he has the same density body mass as we do.
And you didn't see any hair at all? You don't recollect seeing eyebrows?
No facial hair, no eyebrows, no hair hanging up below the hat or the cap. None of that was there.
And just to recap, you said the eyes were, I think in the Joe Rogan podcast, you said they were about twice as big.
Yeah, 2 to 3 times as big as ours, yeah.
And then the ears, at first you thought he didn't have any ears, and then you saw ears, and they were there, but what was different essentially? They just laid back.
Right. If you can imagine in this picture, if this guy turned left or to the right, what you would see is what looks like the bumps of your lobe being pressed against the skull of your skull with a hole in the middle of it where, our hole is. So he has ears, but they're just not sticking out. They are pressed against his skull.
And anything else stick out? Like when he spoke and he opened his, he was verbalizing when he spoke. Was there anything different about the way his mouth moved, or was there anything else that was sort of strange about his movement? I mean, I know his run was quite strange, and how he sort of flailed his arms like he was being pushed by a wind.
Sometimes when I did feel fear a couple more times throughout that part of the conversation, but I quickly gained control of myself. But each time that happened, he tended to look away like, oh crap, here he goes again. So he did make some of those gestures, but I could tell he was just kind of like, maybe he was breaking off the telecommunication so he didn't have to feel it. And then he would re-engage with me, or maybe he was doing something like that. But I could tell when I got upset, he tended to turn away his gaze from me.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yep.
Okay, now while we're talking about appearance, we have a short clip. And it's Charles James Hall. If the audience doesn't know who Charles James Hall, he just actually did an episode on Jesse Michaels' podcast just recently. I didn't even know he was still living, but he is still living. And so he was in the Air Force and was stationed at Nellis in the mid-'60s. I think he was there from 1965 to 1967. and he was like the Air Force range, and correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong. I think he was the Air Force range weather observer, and he was out there on the range and essentially discovered, though wasn't told or briefed or anything, but just discovered on his own through working out there, that the Air Force was maintaining a base, an extraterrestrial base within Nellis Air Force Range. And he was coming across these white, humanoid, human-looking entities that would travel around in family groups, which he eventually gradually started to develop some relationships with some of them. And I honestly think that, he's just a guy. There's so much detail and depth to his accounts that it's just really hard to fathom, how he could have been fabricating all this. So we're going to play a short clip of him talking about the appearance of the tall white, which I think corresponds hugely to the way you just described this man.
They're humanoid. Their skin is as white as a piece of paper. Throughout much of their adult life, they're the same height that I am, 5'11", 6 feet tall. They have large eyes. Their eyes are perhaps twice as large as ours. They're typically blue, and then blue eyes with white pupils. Although when they get older, especially the men, their eyes take on a pink shade. Their eyes stretch further around the sides of their head than human eyes do, and their ears and their noses are only about half the size of human ears and noses, and their ears lay back along the side of their head more than a human does. Their lips are not as prominent as humans, and they don't have teeth. They just have ridges because they're plant eaters. They don't eat meat. They have much less hair than we do. They don't have any hair on their arms, and the men don't have beards. On their head, they have only about half as much hair as humans, and their hair is so thin and transparent that they appear to be platinum blonde. Okay, sometimes when they keep their hair cut short, sometimes they don't appear to have hair because it's so thin.
So that is considerably similar to how you described. Just a lot of overlap there. He's talking about the ears, how they lay back on the head. That is exactly what you saw, and that's why it appeared to the other man that he had no ears, because they lay back further on the head. The eyes are twice as large as human eyes. What's your comments on that? I mean, there was maybe some difference.
Well, I don't know if Charles. I don't know what cross section of the population that he saw with the eye color, and whether there's variation. I wouldn't know.
Well, he said that they're typically
right,
white blue people, so that does imply that
they do have other color, and I think maybe I did that. I did encounter maybe one that had darker looking eyes. The other thing is that I think Charles also mentions in his video there is that later on he describes that they mainly only came out at night, and that bright light does affect them. And perhaps the pupil of the guy that I was in, since it was daylight, might have been very, very large, which it did appear to be so, is that I mainly saw that black central part taking up most of that central area of his eye. So that was another reason why they maybe appeared very dark to me.
Right.
Yeah, that's the way I would say that, yeah, we have a lot of similarity there. And he describes the ears the way I do, that they're pressed back against the skull, and that they don't have as much leeway to be able to flop around like ours. all that stuff makes total sense. And yeah, I would think that, if this person I ran into had short hair, I probably wouldn't have detected it according to the way he described it.
Right.
Hey, Jim, I just come across this very interesting. I'm going to pull this up. This was actually a post that Jason shared. So let me pull this up. It's a really good picture here.
Yeah, this one's very silvery. So if you could imagine it being more like whitish, like a chalky white. But this is a very accurate. This is almost as accurate as I've ever seen anybody create. But that's kind of generally the shape. You can see the black portion that looks like an egg on the back part. That's where the aft or the back part of it is.
Oh, so that's the back, the egg on the left.
Correct. And then the cockpit actually is the front bulbous area, and it opens up like a hinge that's attached to the top of it, and it opens up, like kind of like one of those Easter eggs, the plastic Easter eggs you fill with candy.
Yes.
Kind of like that. But if you can imagine, instead of it just popping open, it's one of those eggs that has a little bit of a hinge on it. That's what it kind of looked like. And then that front area that's kind of a triangular area, when the cockpit is open, a set of stairs appears on that side so the pilot can jump up into that. And when the canopy was open, when this entity left, I could see that there were two chairs actually inside the cockpit. So there was one in the front and one directly behind that chair. So here you can see also the ram's horns that extended from the top of the craft to the bottom.
Yes.
So again, this is where the craft I saw when it was resting on the desert floor. The tips of the ram's horns were what was on the ground, along with that bulbous area underneath the cockpit.
Yeah, I definitely see what you was talking about then, because when you guys were talking about the ram horn, I wasn't seeing it. But now, as I think about it now, that is definitely...
Yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to point out is that the ram's horns did turn a little bit, not a lot, but the very tips of them kind of turned in and out depending on whether it was on the landed or whether it was in flight. When it was in flight, they were toe in, so it looked like a big circle. When it was landed, these things kind of flipped out and it rested on them.
Okay. So this picture here, this triangle here, that was where the steps were, correct?
Yes, and actually when the cockpit is open, on the very top of that, on the inside of the cockpit, that's where the controls were for the flight. Is where you could see that there was some kind of, it was just like sitting in a fighter jet. The same thing as there, how they have the joystick in the middle,
right?
Like that. You could kind of see that there was something there, some instrumentation where he could control the craft. That's what it gave me the impression of, was that area had some kind of control mechanisms in it.
Now, what's this one that we're looking at?
That is just a top view.
Okay.
No, that is wait a minute. Is that top or bottom? Oh, that's like a top view of it. Yeah, because the black thing is in the back. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's the top view. That's all it is.
Okay. All right. And that part you said opens? Would it be this part?
Yes, that part there. Not all the way back to the ram's horns. The hinge was a little bit further forward, but it flipped up like, one of those Easter eggs do.
Okay. All right. Yeah, interesting. And this is the back, correct?
Yeah, the black portion there that looks like a chicken's head or whatever you want to call it, an egg. To me, it was more egg shaped. That one's a little bit more angular. I think it's a little bit off in that regard. But yeah, that's the aft part.
Okay. All right. All right. Yes, I didn't mean to get you guys off course. I just had seen that when I was looking at those pictures, and it was there on your X. And I was like, nice. I need to show this because this will let people really get a good perspective of what you guys were talking about.
Yeah, I've got another picture of 3D rendering that is actually even more accurate than that one. And I also hand drew some for James Fox for the program, the movie he made. I appear in there, and I gave him hand drawings of what I thought the cockpit looked like, the way the canopy opens up, and everything else is in there. But it's all hand drawn pencil drawings.
Yeah, because I do see that you have. Let me see if I can bring this up. This is a video, apparently.
There you go. That actually, in shape, is more accurate right there, because it was more egg-shaped, that back part right there, the black egg-shaped area. And you see how the canopy and everything is a little less bumpy looking.
Yes.
It's more streamlined in this one, and that's something that definitely I'm like, yeah, this is more accurate. But you can see they're both very close. Both renderings are very, very close.
Wow.
And actually, the white hue here is very, very, very close. If you could imagine that there was a bit of a shine to it, yes, that's kind of how it definitely looked. The other aspect of this that I don't really talk about much, that only people that were there could probably describe, is that it did change some colors when it was running. It was in operational, like flight mode or gearing up for flight mode, and it did change colors. The skin of the craft changed colors, and then it evened out to after it was in flight. It was totally white at that point.
What colors did it change to? And
they're kind of like a pastel red, pastel blue, and a pastel green, and then white again, and then it would just rotate through. I'm not sure if that's the exact color sequence, but it was kind of like that. It would just, and the way that the color would appear on the craft is like there's a couple of like plastic cars that they sell for kids, where you put them in hot water and cold water, and they change hue, and they change color. That's kind of how it did. It kind of permeated the skin, and then it would permeate the skin with another color, permeate the skin with another color. And that's the way it went.
So Charles James Hall never mentioned a craft exactly like that.
No.
Although he did mention, two crafts. Now we have to remember that, of course, his knowledge of the tall whites is incomplete and is not, completely. He's not aware of everything. From his capacity as weather observer on the Air Force Base range. He was only aware of what he came into contact with.
Yep.
But he did talk about a long range craft that they would use to travel from wherever they were coming from to the base, that would depart like on a 2-week sort of basis, where they would come and go during the full or new moons because they're gravity powered. And then he talked about the scout craft, which was egg shaped or ellipsoidal.
Yep.
And was white, and I think with a kind of sheen and shine to it. I think he said, you described this craft. And so, even though it's not the same craft, I mean, it's still reminiscent of.
Well, Charles also said that he kind of left certain little factoids like that, sometimes on purpose, and sometimes just it wasn't important for him when he was talking about it. But who knows? Maybe if he looked at that picture at some point and he reviewed it on his own, he could say, oh, that looks similar, or there's some changes here, because when I saw this craft, it was in the 1990s. When he saw his craft, it was in the 1960s.
Right. Yeah.
And for what he was saying, we helped manufacture some of these for them, for the tall whites. And maybe there were some design changes that ended up looking more like what I saw, but generally the shape is still there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there's a big sort of time difference, and presumably there could have been a lot of changes, to their craft. And it seems like at the time that Charles was there, they were really unsatisfied, or there was one sort of communication where he might have been
There you go. That's
The
my
being,
picture. Yeah.
might have been the being he referred to as Range 4 Harry, who told him that they aren't really well built, that there's problems, and there's this particular issue that they really don't like, where if something goes wrong, they have to land the craft in the desert and then get outside and work on it from the outside of the craft.
Yep.
And that was not something optimal to them. Their sort of craft that they brought with them, the long range craft, could be repaired on the inside, with these scout craft that they used American materials to build were imperfect like that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of similarity there with what I knew about things as well. So yeah, I would say that we're looking at probably something that's the program people know about, at least. So I would say definitely between Charles's story and mine, both, we kind of have a lot of similarity there. I didn't know about a lot of his story until after I'd come forward. Actually, I'd never even looked at all of that until afterwards. So it's kind of good for me because I was like, oh, I'm not alone. There is another witness to this kind of stuff. And
Right.
I really paid attention to what he said because the way he describes the process of the way he was, given kind of full run of the complex there at Groom Lake. That is exactly the way the base commander had told me when he gave me my orientation run around the whole base, because he drove me around in the car. And he even pointed out the weather station. And he said, the guy who works there doesn't need to have a badge even, because he's free to walk wherever he wants to. And I thought, wow. And I was like, I think I remember asking him too, why do you put a weather station out here? He just laughed at me. He didn't tell me why. He just laughed at me. So he probably knew
So he was insinuating that there was something about the weather station that was more than meets the eye.
Yes, just like Charles had discovered for himself that, they hired him to do the weather, but then he got introduced slowly to this presence that was there of these NHI. So,
right. To me, it's still unclear, what, if anything, he was being used for, other than, his standard duties. Like, did he serve some kind of function for them with respect to the
that is a mystery to me. I think
Yeah.
if Charles is hiding that is something that he's not comfortable talking about. Mostly what I took from his testimony or his story was that, he was just hired to kind of be like a liaison, somebody or an emissary of the human race that they could bring their children and themselves up to observe, what it's like to be a human, and what they do. And just something simple like a weather station, just like you go to like NASA for us and our kids, they give you a simple bottle rocket to shoot, it's the kind of same thing, because they have, any intelligent race likes entertainment. And gosh, you're on another planet, you want to go see stuff. And that's another thing that I thought was kind of weird at first about Charles's story, was that they actually went to Vegas with these entities. And I was like, wow, that blows my mind. But at the same time, he said, well, they got the same likes and dislikes we do. And they like shopping. The women like our fashion and all this other stuff. And I was like, it kind of makes sense, because when you bring Indian Springs into the picture, it's like a little mini oasis. They've got a little shopping store and everything else there. And I thought to myself, this would be, and the entrance, the pathway that Charles Hall would take, actually you can go from the north side of the Indian Springs base area, or the controlled area there in the fence line, and you can go right up to where he worked at the weather station up by Groom Lake.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite possible that the Tall Whites were using Indian Springs for parts of their entertainment. Maybe they like, requesting certain items be delivered to Indian Springs so that they could enjoy them. I don't know.
Yeah, that's just really interesting. All the facets of that story. And he did say that they were generally friendly. but they were individuals, and there were some that, seemed, maybe dodgy to him, that kind of frightened him. He mentioned, the general, that he was
The teacher,
terrified.
yep.
Uh,
The teacher, according to him, it could be quite terrifying as well. That little pencil thing that she could use.
right. And they could suppress your memory, and suppress your consciousness. And he described one event where the group of tall whites, wanted to basically observe him up close,
Mm-hmm.
and so they essentially switched him off, and then he experienced, kind of a missing time episode, as a result of that. And yeah, they just kind of, it's the one detail that, kind of gave you the impression that they don't consider, humans on equal, or it seems to suggest that they don't quite, some of them maybe don't see themselves on equal footing as humans, that they could just, like we were a zoo animal, kind of shut us off, and come and observe and do whatever they want, and then turn us back on.
Mm-hmm.
And that detail is relevant to what we're going to talk about next here. So just getting back to the end of the story. Well, let's go back to real quick. I think we need to cover the Tritium thing. So we've got some kind of audio thing going on. So he mentioned that he was looking for tritium or something like that. You mistakenly thought it was titanium. He said no, it wasn't that. Have you been able to find anything else? Is there anything interesting that you've discovered since about the nature of that particular element, material?
Well, as you know, the Nellis Test Range is also partly used by DOE to do nuclear testing. I found out later that this material, tintium, is a byproduct of, the use of atomic or nuclear weapons, and that there is a lake bed that's probably, it's closer to the Tonopah Gate, which is further east. But that place is where they detonated some bombs, and there may have been some of the material there. So I felt bad that years and years later, after I had this encounter, I could have just directed him to someplace I knew very well to go pick up this material and help him repair his craft. But that's the only new revelation I have about this material. I have been told by other folks that know what it can do is that it is a good conductor, I guess, of electromagnetic energies or something like that. It is pliable, but breakable as well. So there's all these different properties. I'm probably misspeaking about all this because I'm not a metallurgist by any means or a materials guy. But when you look up that material, tintium has some definite properties that raise the eyebrow. And I knew nothing about this at the time. So for me to have picked up on that name back in the 90s, yes, I know that was a material that people knew of. However, it wasn't very widely used.
Right. It's a pretty rare, it's a thing that, very few people are going to have on hand, which begs the question, why on earth, did he think that it would be feasible that he might be able to get some tintium off of you and your guys? That's
He
the
probably
strange.
knew. Well, I'm thinking if they have a presence there that goes back even to just, the 30 years between me and Charles Hall's experiences, they probably knew that there was a lot of nuclear and atomic testing going on around that site. They probably, because you can feel those explosions in Beatty, Nevada, which is miles and miles away. So they probably knew about it, and for them it might have just been like, in school, where if they were teaching us about nuclear fission and everything else, we would have known that this was a byproduct of that process. So for them, maybe they're taught that, and they just assumed that all of us knew about it. Or something like that, or that, me being a worker there on the test range, that I would point them to the nearest, tinium field where they go pick stuff. Because I don't know if they have a lot. apparently don't have a lot of interaction with anybody beyond Groom Lake. So they may have assumed that all of us knew about what was going on at Groom Lake as well, because maybe they don't get told much about the rest of us.
Right.
So it's very much one of those things where, you get into these clandestine programs, and even the NHI are either told to stay put where they're told to stay put. And here I am running into one of them that may have had an altercation with one of the Groom Lake security forces, let's say. And as he was leaving the area in this craft, they got shot at. Something like that may have happened, back in 1994. And that's why he was on the range and his craft was damaged. And that was something that was not normal operations, because from what Charles Hall says is that their piece of the land there on the Nellis Test Range is considered like an embassy. It's their soil. We're not allowed to control it. They are.
Yeah, they control their borders. I mean, the Air Force controls the outer borders of the Air Force base, but they have an inner perimeter, which they themselves, he says, controls. Yeah. They have their own guards and everything.
Which makes sense.
So he might have been in a desperate situation. Maybe he knew that it was very low probability that you'd have Tintium or would be able to tell him where to get some. But just as a matter of course, and given his desperate situation, he just thought that, it's, still maybe advisable to consult you regardless, of the low probability, because he maybe had no other choice, and you have very few options, might as well, check.
Well, who knows? I don't know how they go through the selection process for people to work in that program, but maybe there is some aspect that was different from the other people in the vehicles, because when I looked over at a certain point, they all looked like they were in a trance of some sort. And I was not. I was the only person able to communicate at that point. Everybody else was kind of shut off. Like you said, when Charles Hall was just shut. That's what they looked like to me. I even almost snickered to myself because they look so silly. So maybe there's something there, maybe that I had that he noticed that, or maybe he was able to detect the fact that I had been read into the program and perhaps knew something that the others did not. And just my willingness to help him and step out onto the roadway, that may have been an indication to him that, oh, this guy I can talk to. Or he seems to know, he seems to be, somebody I can, communicate with. So maybe all those things were part of his decision making as I was stepping onto the roadway. So all those are possibilities, but that's all just opinion right now, or conjecture on my part, because I don't know what was going on in his mind and what his decision process was. All I know is when he communicated, it was directly to me about certain things, and that after the fact, there seems to be this residue information that was left with me that I can't explain. Point in fact was when I was interviewed, like I said, there is some missing time around lunchtime that same day. And I have like flashbacks of memory of a star map, of seeing the Black Mountain Schoolhouse where I worked from about 150 feet in the air. I remember looking down on it. And I walked out with my lunch, even though it was a freezing cold freaking day. And I don't know where my lunch went when I went back into the schoolhouse, and there's kind of like missing time in there somewhere. But the star map, the UAP task force interviewed me. They made me draw it. And I had no idea what I was drawing. And I just said, here, this is what I remember. And they looked at it and they said, do you know what this is? And I was like, no. They said, well, this is the constellation Leo. And he said, do you know anything about this large red star that you put on this map? Because I made a little PowerPoint thing with all the, different things that I remembered. And I'm like, no. And then I had to stop, because then I got this flood of information that just kind of came out of my head from somewhere. And I actually began to cry, because there was something very sad about remembering that red star. And when I went through the interview with the UAP task force, I was like, yeah, something horrible happened with that star in the ancient past, and that it actually killed an entire planet and I think was his home planet that got destroyed. And I've had time to since then kind of unravel that memory that was just put in me somehow by this individual, that this was an event that was very catastrophic, because you got to understand he's telepathic. And when they knew this star was going to kill their planet and everything on it, and that some of them wanted to move on to another colonized planet, but some of them actually wanted to stay at home and just die there. And it was a very sad day for them, because they actually, being telepathically connected, could feel, their friends and family actually passing away at that same time when that red star took them out. So it's kind of like a memorial, like we have of the two towers in New York City, the Trade Center going down. It's that same sort of a feeling of sadness that was part of that memory. And yeah, that still upsets me if I dwell on it for too long. But those are the kind of things where I say there's some kind of residue there. Now, I don't know whether it's part of the missing time, where perhaps we, talked about where he's from and where I'm from, and we got to know each other, and this was just something he communicated to me, but it was supposed to be part of the memory that I wasn't supposed to remember. But somehow it came out when I got interviewed by the UAP task force, and I don't know how that happened, other than the fact that I've been told by other people that have interviewed abductees that yes, that does happen, but usually the suppressed memory comes forward, because they're good about getting rid of the memory. However, if you can remember a smell or how cold it was, olfactory memories are very hard to erase, and sometimes they prompt the actual memory back into life. And I think maybe that's what happened, is somehow the sadness of talking about that red star brought other things to light, that the sadness brought the memory back.
Interesting. So when you were being questioned by them, and sort of going through all this memory, you were sort of jogging your memory, and that's why you think it maybe came up.
Yeah.
And so something significant, potentially happened, probably, during that missing time event. Have you gotten the chance yet to explore that under hypnosis?
No, they don't like us being under hypnosis when we have clearances. Very big no-no. They don't like it because they're afraid you're going to spill classified information, because you're not in control of yourself when you're under hypnosis. So they totally hate that. I suppose if they had an Air Force person that could hypnotize me, that has a clearance, maybe I could go and see that person and get hypnotized and see if they can pull all these memories out of me. I'd love to increase my memory of everything that I experienced during my program days, as well as this incident after I was out of the program. And other experiences I've had in life as well that are outside of all of this. But yeah, that'd be interesting. I'd like to remember everything that as closely and as accurately as I could. But no, it's not something I've done. I've never been hypnotized to bring this stuff out.
And so I just wonder, what happened. So you had this kind of haphazard interaction, but that's how some abductions are. Some people will have what seems like a chance encounter, and then from that chance encounter they are just like marked from then onward, and they go on to have other abduction experiences and missing time events. I'm just wondering, what conceivably could have been the purpose to, subsequent to that interaction that you had on the roadway there, why they would have, or he would have, or someone would have, from that group abducted you. Or if it was even, I mean, it's also possible that it might not have been the ETs who abducted you. Although I know, I mean, there's the sort of residue in the, the memory of the star map and the red star. But I suppose it's still in the realm of possibility that some organization who's really on top of things, quickly got wind of what had transpired on the roadway, And as they, tend to do with many abductees, post abduction experience, they MyLab them, they abduct them themselves. We're not really sure exactly why they do this. I think that they could be, trying to find out anything they can, about the interaction or what the ETs were up to, and they might be using hypnosis techniques themselves to get out of you,
I know that the other thing that I did mention in another podcast was that after, I told him, go ask the guys in Groom Lake for your material. And when he said no, I did mention to him, I said, well, I do go to college down in Las Vegas, and my teacher for my, I think it was geophysics class. And I just thought maybe my teacher or my professor would know somebody who's a metallurgist and could help identify this. And perhaps that was something that maybe this missing time is all about, is maybe he wanted to, take me with him and explore that option, because, he may have done several things, because I do have a very quick memory of walking into the lobby of my college and it was with him. And that may have been something that actually happened. So he may have been actually with me to go see if there was somebody that could help him out.
So later on, you had a memory emerge of now a very vague, sort of fragmented, dream-like memory of being with him. And can you give me the full memory?
All I remember is that we walked in the front door of the college, the Community College of Nevada, or Las Vegas, excuse me. And I remember only entering with him off to my right. And then we walked in, and at about 20 paces into walking up to the front clerk, that's where the memory ends. That's all I remember, is just walking in the door with him. And at a certain point, and it may have been because I remember that more than anything else, because maybe he had to project some kind of an image that wouldn't alarm people around him. And at his appearance and everything.
Right. He could totally psychically mask himself from the perspective of outsiders.
Right. So that may have been what he was doing, or he was maybe shutting them off while we went up to the front desk. So I don't know exactly. Like I said, I've only got that memory of starting to walk up to the clerk and all that.
That would be so fascinating to go under hypnosis and potentially expose more of that memory, because that's really something that he really needed that tintium then, you gave him that suggestion and he's like, fuck, well, we're gonna try it.
His craft was functional, but it was broken. It wasn't fully functional. So yeah, it was something where he wanted to repair it so he could do what he wanted to and get. To me, I think he was just looking for just get me the hell out of here. I don't want any part of this anymore. It was kind of what I think he wanted, was just, he wanted to get away from Groom Lake and whatever work he was trying to do there. He just wanted to get the heck away from it all. And that was about it. And I think that was kind of how it went. So I don't know how he ended up that way. I mean,
so another possible person to contact might be the metallurgist that your professor knew, or your professor himself.
Mm-hmm.
It would be risky, and socially risky, to ask him such a thing. But whether he recalls anything odd happening around that time period, or missing time, or anything strange witnessed. So, and you did, just to get to the end of the encounter. So as soon as you gave him that suggestion, he just abruptly he thought about it, and he thought, oh, maybe, or something like that. Maybe I could do that. And then he just abruptly turned around, right? And then he went straight back to his craft, and you witnessed him go into the craft and then and do you want to describe just that ending?
Yeah. So he gets back in the craft, the canopy closes, and it takes off. He goes through the gyration of colors, and then eventually the colors turn white. I don't know whether that's because they were cycling so quickly, or whether the colors just disappeared, and it was just a white craft at that point. I've been told that those three colors together can, on a prism, when they're combined, can look white. So maybe it was just rotating very, very quickly through the colors. But anyway, it rises up straight off the desert floor. It goes out over the roadway in a stair-stepped way, and off it went. And that's how it ended. And as the craft was disappearing, all my friends started coming back to normal. They weren't in a trance anymore. Somebody noticed the time, and we're like, oh crap, we're late. We need to get up there instead of the equipment. So we all just took off like a bat out of hell to get back up there. And I'm just in shock about the whole damn thing. And I didn't know what was going on. And I don't
And
know how it all ended.
and did you feel like you behaved unnaturally in the sense that you didn't immediately discuss it, with the rest of the people in the
The only
car?
guy I discussed it with was the ranking individual. I do remember him shaking his head at me after I came back from that
Right after.
time at lunch. I also found out, we tried to get back in contact, and we were getting along really great on LinkedIn. And then I mentioned this particular incident, and he totally ghosted me. But he's always been that way. He's always felt as though talking about this stuff is something you just should not do, even though you were part of it. So he's always been very fearful about that. So that's just him. Different people react different ways. I think James Fox tried to locate the other individuals in the car with me. I don't know how successful he was. I do know that another person that was interviewed for that movie, I don't want to mention the person's name, says that yes, he knows of two of the individuals that were there the week before and knew me. And he says he knows exactly who knows me when I was in the program. So actually, James Fox knows of a person that can vouch for the fact that, yeah, I was in the program, and that there were two other individuals that could vouch for parts of the experiences. Yeah. So that's the frustration, though, is getting people to come forward. It's very scary for a lot of folks.
Yeah. You just might not be able to, because there also might be forces working against you, and the reason that guy might have ghosted you is because they're trying to keep a lid on this, and they could easily, I know they have, remote mind control technology that could easily, put a thought in his head and like, no, or an emotion or what have you, and completely block someone from doing what they would otherwise do.
Well, back then, it was just after the brown shoe days, so to speak, where they could kick your ass for doing dumb stuff. So there was a lot of that fear. That was when we had a lot of stigma about UFOs. If you're an Air Force guy or a gal, you didn't talk about it because back then they would threaten you very vehemently with bodily harm if you said anything out of line. So, yeah, and even me, I shut my mouth for many, many years until finally I saw something in the news, and that's the only reason I came forward. And then this experience popped up when I'm on the UAP Task Force's website, and it ate at me for a couple of weeks, at least, maybe even a month. And I was like, I know about this incident, and this because they showed the video that you guys just showed, and all the other stuff. So everybody, all the intelligence analysts and everybody else was talking about it. And eventually I told that part of the story. Well, the other half of the story is that the next week I actually had a run-in with the pilot. So that's where, the UAP task force picked me up and started asking me questions, which led to me becoming a whistleblower. But the whistleblower decision was kind of a separate issue other than my experiences in the program and outside the program, because becoming a whistleblower was more of a reporting what I thought was fraud, waste, and abuse. That's what I thought was going on, because I saw some things in the news and it looked like they were doing either human trafficking or drug trafficking or both. And I knew what the craft was. I'd seen it before. or something like it before. And I thought to myself, this is not right what they're doing with this craft. And that's why I became a whistleblower. So there are two issues there.
What craft are you talking about? Are you not
Triangular
talking about
typically called TR3.
Okay. TR3B or the TR3. I think there's an A as well.
There's an A and a B model. Yeah. So that's what the claim is. But anyway, I saw that and I was like, well, I think I need to do something about it. So I sat there for a bit and I thought, how do I do this? I mean, and I literally had to put on the same mindset as if I was going on a deployment to Pakistan or Afghanistan and not knowing if I was going to come back alive or not. I just thought to myself, well, this could be the rest of my life is ruined or not. But am I dedicated enough to letting the truth be known? And I came to the decision that no, if they are doing this kind of stuff, somebody has to tell Congress and at least investigate this, because my hope was that they investigated it and they're going to find out everything's fine and that everything we're seeing was something that was totally different. But at least then I would have peace of mind that, this was being taken care of. The other thing was that inside the program, we had me and my team of people that were in the program with me. Mm-hmm. We were out doing a mission and we did intercept some information that stated the NHI were going to come back for their equipment and ask for any prisoners to be released and their equipment be returned to them. And some other group of people they called the fugitives would be handed over. Those are the three conditions about this next meeting, and that falls into this 2025 to 2035 window of time. Perhaps the NHI are coming back, and in that particular bit of information, they actually had said that if we did not return this stuff, they were going to start putting people to death inside the program. So on behalf of my friends and caring about my friends, because most of the people in the program are very kind, very good, very patriotic. They just don't know about everything because they're in a stovepipe program. They don't see the big picture and all the awful things. And I just wanted to at least give them a warning that, hey, remember that time when we were out on mission and we intercepted this information. You got to know that this is not going to end well if we don't do the right thing and return this stuff. Because apparently there has been some grievances, according to not just me, but other abductees have stated that, yes, there was a type of gray that abducted a guy named Herman.
Yeah, I was just going to bring him up. I was trying to think of his name. From the 70s. And that was what he was told on board the craft, is that they had shot down a craft that belonged to this ET group, and they wanted the craft back or the people they took. I can't remember exactly which, but yeah.
Yeah, and then they asked him if he could talk to the president or government, and he was like, "I'm a nobody. You don't understand. I can't do that."
Right.
And like, well, you're going to force us to take up grievances with our own form of government and law enforcement. And if you guys can't resolve this with us now, that's where we're going to head with this whole thing about this down craft and our people. Because what you did was wrong. It's really what they were telling Herman. That your people in this program did something awful to our people, and that's what their grievances were, and that's what this conversation kind of revolved around. Was pretty much what Herman actually. I didn't even know about his story until after I had become a whistleblower, and I was like, holy crap! I didn't even know that somebody had an encounter where these same beings were saying that this is what they were going to do if we didn't turn the stuff over. But everything coincides with what I knew about when I was on mission. So take it as you will. I had concern for my people inside the program. I was like, holy crap, I don't want any of them to die. And then when I asked David Grush later on, because he's the one who interviewed everybody else, I said, Dave, is there any chance that they have started returning this equipment and turning over their prisoners or, anybody that's from, these downed craft? And he said, no. Unfortunately, it sounds an awful lot like it's gotten a lot worse. And that's when my heart sank. And that's when I knew I had to say something. I had to go public, because that's the only way I could outreach with the people in the program hopefully they could see some of my interviews and I'm reminding them, hey guys, I'm one of you. I care about you. You're my friends. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. Can you please, if you're still in the program, talk to the leadership about what we intercepted back in the 1990s, please, and let them know their lives are in danger. Because when we intercepted that, I know that the lead analyst went across the street and talked to the leadership at that installation. And I don't know what happened to that. I don't know whether they sat on it or anything. But according to what David Grush was saying, is that it appeared like things got worse. So I think they just brushed it under the carpet and just went on their happy way, and didn't even announce it to the rest of the workforce inside the program. So there may be people working inside the program, realistically, that might have their lives at risk and they don't even know it because they're working on one part of the program and nobody's told them about all this other stuff.
That's always been one of the really big head scratchers for me. Like we've learned from a lot of like the Disclosure Project witnesses, Stephen Greer's people, that they're routinely, I think, at the rate of on average 2 craft a year, they're shooting down at these black sites in the desert. And there's just always been, I think, just a humongous question of how are they doing that? How could they possibly have made that decision? Like to do something like that just seems on the face of it to risk, the entire, planet and population, to risk annihilation, complete total annihilation, really. And so I've always wondered, what could possibly explain, how they could I guess maybe the reward is so great to them, the retrieval and the apprehension of tech like that, has such a payout that it justifies to them. This is insane, of course, but it justifies to them, running a risk like that. Or my other, and this is kind of more recondite hypothesis, that they have the backing potentially of an ET race that wants to maintain the status quo, that would never let, they're potent enough of a force that would never let civilization or the American government, be wiped out. And the Americans know that. And so they're acting accordingly and just
It's a possibility. There's a number of different theories. I don't know for sure. I was never briefed on exactly why the presence of the NHI are here. All I know is that they are part of the program. They did appear in a number of different missions in different lab environments. Every time any NHI presence was there, it was not a free-for-all. It was a very controlled environment, and they didn't like to have the humans even around when they were operating their NHI equipment. They would literally go in, do what they had to, take their equipment out, and then the humans were allowed in the lab, kind of a thing. So they didn't even want the humans looking at what they were doing. So it's not like this hunky-dory, everybody's kumbaya kind of thing. This is something where there's a kind of tension, or at least a cautiousness between the NHI and the humans. On our side, I think initially, since it was right after World War II, I think we took it as a threat when we downed those craft. Because honestly, I think some people really thought that this was some kind of hoax from the Russians. They thought that this was a preemptive World War III thing, that they had these strange pieces of equipment now that they had maybe stolen from the Nazis or something, from their Wunderwaffe or whatever, that maybe this was what they were looking at in this desert. And so they had all these things running through their minds back in the 1950s. And to tell you the truth, being in there at Groom Lake, it was like all the buildings were still like World War II. The smell was like a museum. You could tell that, it's like a microcosm unto itself. It didn't change much. And usually when you get in the program, you can stay in it for the rest of your life. So maybe the torch from the first batch of guys and leadership just, they groomed the next guy to think like them. And so it's always stayed in that threat mode ever since. And that's how they run it, is that, whenever the NHI wants something, is they always throw that in the NHI's face and say, well, you you came here without announcing yourself, and you did this and you did that, and you're flying around and you're, blah, blah, blah. So they probably have a lot of stuff like that. Maybe that's what's making things a little bit harder. I'd like to think they have since come to some sort of agreement. However, even some of those appear to be very bad. It's like abductions. I mean, hearing about that from the Project Blue Book days, that perhaps there was some sort of a treaty to abduct X amount of humans a day.
To allow for, yeah. And,
I'm just wondering, what the hell did they get themselves into?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, I mean, they're certainly not impeding abductions, and so I mean that in and of itself, seems to suggest that that they're condoning it, or that they've, they're standing back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I could just see it. I know Lou Elizondo, he thinks it all is very much a threat. I don't see it as that. I think it's more of a mix between, there's some of them that are a threat and others that are not. Because I have more experiences outside the program that are more, very benevolent and very kind and even protective kind of experiences. But not everybody who works in the program has those kind of experiences. So maybe I'm unique in that way as well. So there's all these different viewpoints that need to be explored. I don't have all the answers. I'll never tell you I have all the answers. A lot of the stuff that you pressed me on, I'm giving you my impression from the experience. I don't know for a fact that this guy was thinking this way. I don't know for a fact if Tintium works in his craft. I don't know for a fact what biological makeup, if he was part human and part something else. I have no idea. I didn't have a blood test to give him that day. So I wish I did, but I just ran into him, and all I have is this is what happened. I can tell you what I think he was thinking at the time, and that was about it.
Right, and I think it's so obvious that that's how you're conducting things, and to me that just speaks volumes as to your credibility. Like you're just giving your precise observations of what you saw, and you're being clear, with what you know and don't know. And I just feel like your entire testimony is like that, and I think you.
Thank you.
Deserve a lot of credit, because I think witnesses who are like that are really far and few between. I think there's just, I think because of just human psychology, just most people just can't relay their stories objectively without.
Sure. Well, and I think it's a matter of experience. I mean, if I hadn't had all the different things happen to me and my family, even from young childhood, I think I might have been a totally different person. I've also heard that no matter what kind of encounter you have with NHI, it's like they know why they're doing it, maybe even years before they even meet you, that there's a purpose behind it, and that's playing out in these encounters as well. So there's some people are given large chunks of the big picture. Other people are left with, I got abducted. I've got a sore spot on my hand or my body, and that's all I know. And it was scary, and that's all they're left with is this really weird experience. And I don't know whether that's a reflection on the fact that they just weren't communicated with by these entities, or whether, they were incapable of it for some reason,
or whether they did and the memory was suppressed.
Or they were so scared that it was impossible to have any telepathic contact with them while they were being abducted. All these things are factors. I have no freaking clue. All I can tell you is what I saw and what I heard and what I felt.
Right.
Man, this was an insane episode. And Jason, I thank you so much for coming on. I know that you're busy, and when Jim had first got you on and I seen your name, I was very excited. I'm like, wow, we got to talk to Jason, because some of his stuff is just incredible. So thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah, no problem. I'm always happy to inform the public. I can't tell you everything I know, especially about our weapon systems and the technology itself. or itself. That's all national security stuff. But at least this stuff, there's nothing classified about the possibility that we have extraterrestrial life or not. That's for everybody to decide. I'm telling you, I'm convinced that there is other people. I've encountered those people, and that's the truth of my story, just like other people. And hopefully I've done as best a job as I can to relay that to you guys and the public.
Yes. Yes.
And to Congress, I've told them as well. So.
Right. Yes. And I've seen a lot of your stuff. So I was very excited to have you on and listen to your stories. It's been one heck of an episode.
Well, I had fun doing it too. You guys are good hosts.
Thank you so much, Jason. I want to thank Jason very much for coming on, giving us his time. I learned so much tonight just from listening to him. Thank you, everybody that commented in the chats, and I hope to see everybody on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Thank you, everybody, so much. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.